Hello, hello, hello. My name is Robert. I am the recovery guy, and this is the Checkup.
Hey there. I hope you have had a good week. Welcome to Friday. I'll tell you, I enjoy everything that we do. A Recovery Guy movement, recoveryguy.org, our podcasts, our blogs, the upcoming newsletter. Make sure you go and sign up. Pablo has set up a pretty slick template for you to register for the newsletter. So go to recoveryguy.org, whether it's an iPhone, a tablet, a laptop. Pablo has made sure it is device friendly. So go there and register for the newsletter so we can make sure we get that out to you starting the second week in June. But hey, we're excited to be involved in recovery and wellness, and no matter what you're recovering from or how long you have been in recovery, we hope that this is a regular place for you, right? There's so many things. I don't listen to just one person. I don't read just one thing. I kind of, even as a Christian, I like to get a very eclectic approach to real life support to some of the things that I'm trying to implement in my life and share with you. And and that might even be one of the most exciting things that we as trainers, as life coaches, one of the most exciting things we do, sharing our findings is the teaching side of what we do. And that's exciting, especially when we see you grow. I've had a couple opportunities this week to do our Zoom meetings, and excited, encouraged by them, and seeing people come back and share, and people graduate out of particular programs and get reunified with their children. And so that's always an exciting thing for us to see what we're sharing and putting upon you, things that we've learned in our own experience as recovered people, or things that we learn along the way that you're gaining from and growing with. But it's the learning, it's the sharing, it's the coming up with a concept, an idea, a topic, and then doing the research necessary, because you know what, none of us ever had an original idea, right? And if we thought we had an original idea, even that wasn't an original idea. And so it's the learning, it's the seeing how it fits for us, because unless it fits for us, unless we can own it, we're not going to be genuine in sharing it. So I stand in a long line of podcasters and life coaches that say to you, what we're sharing with you, we're implementing, we're doing in our own way. How that translates to you, I hope it serves as a tool that you can use to either sharpen your saw or dig a deeper hole to grasp more, to get more footing for what you're trying to build, to create a greater foundation so you can become more well one day at a time as we go through this journey. Which brings me to the topic of change. Stages of change. If you listen to Tuesday's podcast, it's happiness doesn't just happen, right? It's a process we go through. It does not happen through osmosis. Neither does change. There are stages of change, and as I did some research on this, it was almost 20 years ago, actually even further now. I think it was probably like in the 90s, so we're probably even talking over 30 years, maybe 35 years, 36 years. You can Google that yourself, but you can pretty much find it. It's called the 5 Stages of Change. Two rather well-known alcoholism researchers, right? And you can apply this, what I'm going to share with you, to really any behavioral change you need. But Dr. Carlo DiClemente and J. Prochaska, they introduced this 5-stage model of change really to help professionals understand their clients and people that they were working with, participants in their program, with different addiction problems and how to motivate them to change. And And it's interesting that their model isn't really just based on abstract theories, but really on personal observation of how people went about modifying problem behaviors such as smoking, overeating, problem drinking, obviously drugs. This can apply to gambling, bulimia, you name it. Any behavioral or substance-related change that needs to occur, they thought that these stages of change were pretty consistent watching people walk down the lane from not thinking there's a problem at all to having great success in overcoming that challenge. So we're going to take a look at those things today, because if nothing changes, then things stay the same, right? Wasn't that brilliant? If nothing changes, as my friend Scotty would say. And if nothing changes, some of us are going to die. Period. Especially those of us who had become chronic in our addiction. Drug addicts, they will die because of an isolated overdose. Alcoholics over time will deplete their resources, and cirrhosis of the liver and other types of things that will kill them more over time than they will like in an overdose instant, like many drug addicts will experience. Gamblers, people who engage in behavior of where they lose everything, in a moment, in an instant, have a tendency to be so depressed they either drink themselves to death or take a drug overdose or kill themselves, quite painfully and tragically. So there's different reasons that we need to break free, and we need to begin to see that there needs a change to be made. Now, in this particular model we're going to look at, there's actually going to be 6 stages. There's a couple models that they came up with. They call it the 5-stage model, but we're going to look at a 6-stage model that they've done. I think it more completely helps us for the illustration of where I think we're at as a recovery community in this recovery movement. And don't worry about writing all these things down. Just absorb them and see how they fit. Go back to the podcast and you can copy down the description. I'll make sure that each one of these points are made. And then you can also Google Dr. Prochaska or Dr. DiClemente, or just Google the 5 stages of change, and you'll find much of the information. I've sort of cut it down a little bit because this is actually a workshop that you could go all day or a couple-day seminar and still have enough meat on the bone to satisfy the most deep thinker. So here we go. The 6 stages of the model are, and I'll walk through them and I'll come back and revisit them. The first one is what is called pre-contemplation. The next one is contemplation, determination, action, maintenance, and termination. Pretty interesting. And I'm going to add some of their material, that how they describe these things, and then I'll add a little bit about my thoughts regarding it. But for a full transcript of this, you're going to want to go check it out. If you're a thinker like me and many of us, if you're involved in wellness and recovery and working with others, this is great information to help others go through the process as we've gone through the process, those of us who are recovered, those of us who are well. So what is pre-contemplation, as DiClemente and Prochaska would say? They would say that it's individuals who are in this pre-contemplation stage of change. They're not even thinking about changing. Nothing about their drinking behavior or other behavioral challenges. They may not even see it as a problem. Or, I remember this, they think that others who point out the problem are exaggerating, and therefore the problem. Wow. Man, that when I read something like that, I had no idea it was called Precontemplation. I just thought it was, get out of my life. You don't know what you're talking about. How many times have we said that? You know what? My problem isn't alcohol. My problem is you telling me my problem is alcohol. Or my problem isn't my gambling. My problem isn't this. My problem that I'm eating too much. My problem is you're getting in my space, right? You're getting up in my face. You're telling me what to do, and that's the problem. It's not what I'm doing. It's that you're telling me what to do. And as soon as you stop telling me what to do, right, just sort of like live and let live, get out of my way, I'm not hurting anyone but me. The problem is you, the problem isn't me, And then, of course, we know that it is. When we stare into the abyss stares back. Thank you, Nietzsche. So we go from pre-contemplation to contemplation. This is really cool, and you're going to love the flow of this, because I think no matter what need you come from, whether or not you knew you were in these stages, we all travel through these stages. I think this is really brilliant. So we go from pre-contemplation to where it's you, it's not me, you're exaggerating my problem, to individuals in this stage, it says they're willing to consider the possibility that they have a problem. And the possibility offers hope for change. However, people who are contemplating change are often highly ambivalent. They're on the fence. Contemplation is not a commitment, and it's not a decision to change. I think of Dr. Paul and Dr. Alcoholic Addict. And he said, I'm paraphrasing here, it's maybe I really am an alcoholic of sorts. He was starting to consider, maybe I have a problem. And that's the stage that this is in. Willing to consider, willing to consider, maybe there's something to this thing. Again, it's not a commitment, but it's opening the door. It's going from you're the problem to maybe I need to look at this. Stage 2. Stage 3 is almost like you could call it pre-action. Not reaction, but pre-action. Kind of gives you an idea what the next step is, right? So determination, I dig this. Deciding to stop drinking, and I'm reading from what I found in the information, deciding to stop drinking is the hallmark of this stage of change. It's what it's known by. It's where the stake is driven down. Deciding to stop drinking. All the weighing of pros and cons, all the risk-reward analysis finally tips the behavior in favor of change. Not all ambivalence or indecision has been resolved, but ambivalence or something that's going to get in the way no longer represents an insurmountable barrier to change. Isn't that good? Determination says something needs to change. I remember, and I've shared this with you before, if you've listened to my podcast before, I've told this story more than once. I stood in the mirror in February of 1986, and the voices were no longer there that were telling me, what am I doing with my life? All the voices, the madness was quieted, and I looked in the mirror, and I realized I was going to die. Something needed to change. And as it says here, finally tips the balance in favor of change. And I knew in that moment, more than any other time, I was going to die. I wasn't going to lose my marriage, wasn't going to lose my house, wasn't going to lose my kids, wasn't going to lose my job, wasn't going to lose respect of friends. I was going to die. I went from this is your fault to maybe I have a problem to maybe I better do something about it. Have you ever got there? What stage are you in, right? Are you considering recovery? Are you toying with maybe I should do this and maybe I should do that? And this is really I want to point this out because I was sharing earlier this week with one of the participants at Annie's house, where I usually go there, but now we're doing Zoom meetings, of course, with the coronavirus. And, prayerfully soon, these treatment centers will open back up, and we who go serve in that community can get back there. And if you're not serving in that community and you want something worthwhile, go into a residential treatment center and share the love and the joy and the recovery that you've been given. The response and gratitude is overwhelming, and I invite you to do it. And so I was telling this person the other night, I was saying, when we come in here, we have so much baggage, right? We have to go and we have to isolate what's doing the most harm, what's killing us the most. Go through that first, attack that first, get rid of that first, and sort of minimize the damage that's being done. And then little by little, as I've shared, being bulimic, I was throwing up 18 months into my recovery. 18 months in my alcohol and drug-free life, I was still throwing up. And I had to use these same steps along the way. So, the great thing about life in this journey, we all get to a point of determination of other things. We need to remove them from our life. So the great thing about this is when we recover from one thing, we can use this same 6 stages of change, these stages of change, to adapt or adopt into other areas of our life. The next one, I like this. It's called action. So we go from pre-contemplation, this is not my problem, you're my problem. Contemplation, maybe I do have a problem. Determination, I need to do something about the problem. And then actions. Individuals in this stage put their plan into action. It says here that this stage typically involves making some form of public commitment to stop drinking in order to get external confirmation of the plan. And I'll even add accountability, right? We are making something known. Trust me when I tell you, others know, right? They're seeing our life crumble around us. They know, but there's something magical about saying, I know you know, and I just want you to know that I know as well. What a wonderful thing to do. So often, I know it sounds very simplistic, but it's very true. We are only as sick as our secrets. That is so true. The power that secrets have over me is amazing. It's its own self-bondage. When I speak something, I take the power of it away. Because, when I speak it, and I think it's the power of the 12-step group, the power of unity, right? Our common welfare should come first. Personal recovery depends upon AA unity. There's something magical about walking into a self-help group, or a church, a synagogue, a temple, and saying, I need help. I have this problem. I have this challenge. And when we have that courage, when we take that kind of action, so often, even people who aren't addicted but who love us can say, I'm so glad you said something. Let me help you get help. Or we go into the room, we're taking action, we're going to a meeting, we're going into treatment, we're doing something, and all of a sudden someone else raises their hand and say, I can relate. I know what you're talking about. I've been through that. I'm going through that. I've gone through that. And all of a sudden, the embarrassment of what we had become decreases, and our power and our energy and our hope increases. I love this stage, into action. Actually, there's a chapter in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, chapter 6, after how it works, is into action. We need to take that determination and translate it into doing something, because determination is just a thought. Determining something in my mind does not mean I'm doing something about it. I love the example of just going. Father Martin says that, just going and getting and recognizing that I do have a cavity doesn't fix the cavity. Now action needs to be taken upon that cavity to restore that tooth, right? To get restoration. And that's what action does. We begin that process of wellness. We begin that process of doing what we need to do to stop being what we have become. The next one is really pretty cool. It's one of my favorite words, and it's maintenance, right? And as the authors of this say, the action stage normally takes 3 to 6 months to complete it. And this is wonderful that we're even saying this, because I actually said this the other night. I said these things will take about 6 months to get out of our system, to start getting synapses firing again and neurotransmitters traveling, and everything starts to balance itself, almost like a stroke victim that needs physical therapy. It takes time to work these things out. Change requires building a new pattern of behavior over time. Here is where time, and I've said it before, time is our best friend. It really is. Because we didn't get sick overnight, and we don't get well overnight. So change requires building a new pattern of behavior over time. Let us learn. Let us grow. And what about Bob, right? Baby stepping this thing. I've never seen a child who went from the crib to running. There's a process. Even when we're getting back in physical shape, as I was morbidly obese and could hardly walk upstairs. Now I'm able to walk. I don't run too much because I have 2 artificial knees, but I can do things because along the way I built up the stamina to do this, and that's what time does in this maintenance stage. It says here the real test of change is long-term sustained change over many years. Don't you like that? The real test of change is long-term sustained change over many years. Like me. Over 34 years of continual recovery. And the great thing is, I'm still in the maintenance program. If you're very familiar with 12-step program, steps 10, 11, and 12 are called the maintenance steps. In step 10, we're continuing to take personal inventory. In step 11, we're seeking through prayer and meditation. And step 12 is we're going and helping others as a result of our spiritual awakening, right? The spiritual transformation that occurs. We're always involved in those maintenance steps, right? I no longer need to do steps 1 through 9 unless I'm working with a newcomer or coaching someone. And then I do them with them, for them. But I do steps 10, 11, and 12 for me, right? Even with my truck, I would never consider driving my truck without paying attention to see what needs to be maintained. Does the oil need changed? Do the tires need to be rotated? What do I need to do here? Do I hear a sound there? What do I need to do to maintain? Because I want to maintain the integrity, the stability of my vehicle. And guess what I am? I am a vehicle for this life. I need to continually be involved in the maintenance, the change that allows me to keep what I have and evolve into something more. And I like what they said, this stage of successful change, I like successful change, not just change, right? Because not all change is good change. Good change is good change, right? The successful change is called maintenance. I love that. And then finally, in the 6th stage here, it's called termination. I thought this was very interesting. Termination. But it makes sense once I read it, and I hope I explain it so it makes sense to you as well. The ultimate goal in the change process is termination. At this stage, they're talking about alcoholics, but it's for everyone. At this stage, the alcoholic no longer finds that alcohol presents a temptation or a threat. I like that. He has complete confidence that he can cope without fear of relapse. This is where 100% being committed to 100% abstinence comes into play. We need to understand, when we understand how far down the scale we had gone, as it says in AA, that alcohol no longer has a role for us in our life, but we can live without fear. We live without fear because I was telling my friend Wendy, we no longer wait for the other shoe to drop. And by the way, there's no longer another shoe. The big book says that we will recoil. When tempted, we will recoil as if from a hot flame. You wouldn't go put your hand over a fire. I hope you wouldn't. To tease yourself to see if you won't get burnt, because guess what? You're going to get burnt. It's going to do damage. And so we know that as long as we keep our hand off the fire, right? In the doctor's opinion of the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, it says, we're now easily able to control our desire for alcohol. The only requirement necessary is to follow a few simple rules. Well, understand what the rules are. Know what the rules are. And once we understand what those rules are, then we can be in that termination stage. Again, the ultimate goal in the process is termination. We no longer find that alcohol presents a temptation or a threat. You know why? We're not suicidal anymore. We're not homicidal anymore. We don't want to kill someone, and that someone isn't us. So we don't engage in that destructive behavior anymore. And because we know that that behavior is destructive, we stay away from it. Right? I have weapons. I'm a concealed carrier of handguns. I know what they do. I know that a handgun, a weapon in the hands of an untrained, unskilled, or not right thinking person has the potential to cause great harm, including kill someone. So understanding that, I can carry my weapon with me without harming you or myself. The same with alcohol. I think one of the greatest gifts to me in my recovery was being a food server in Las Vegas. And when I became employable again, I became a graveyard coffee shop waiter at Fitzgerald's on Fremont Street downtown, right across the street from the Four Queens. I was a graveyard coffee shop waiter. I went from the top floor, the 29th floor of the Las Vegas Hilton, where I worked in room service and hospitality suites, to a graveyard coffee shop waiter at Fitzgerald's. Talk about a bottom. Hello. So here I was doing this, and I had to learn how to be in that termination phase where I could be around it and not have the temptation to kill myself or destroy myself. That's what this termination phase is talking about. Now, I'm not saying if you're precarious and you're not comfortable with being around certain things, that's fine. Don't tempt God. Don't tempt your higher power, right? But in that termination phase, we can see what it was done, and alcohol no longer presents a threat to us. Remember, we suffer with a mental obsession coupled with a physical allergy. My physical allergy will always exist because I am Robert and I am alcoholic. That physical allergy will always be there. So what do I do though? What do I help? What do I find a process for? What do I change, right? We recover from a seemingly hopeless state of mind and body. That mind tells me, that mental obsession says that I can have one or I need to have one. And that triggers the physical allergy. Well, if the physical allergy is stamped in my DNA, I know nothing can be done about that. What can be done? Well, the mental obsession can change. And understanding the stages of change and knowing what I need to do through each phase of that change, when I get to termination, actually when I get to maintenance, and I begin implementing the things necessary that removes that threat, that desire, where I will recoil if I'm tempted as if from a hot flame, or I'm easily able to control my desire because I've diverted the attention somewhere else, right? Nothing happens in a vacuum. We did not get sick overnight. And again, we do not get well overnight. Wellness is a process. So I hope you engage in the process. I hope you go back and look at these points from the description of the podcast. I hope you go back and Google Dr. Prochaska and the stages of change, or Dr. DiClemente and these stages of change, and do a little bit deeper homework. I think you'll find it fascinating. And I really do hope you engage in this process of recovery. Once you have reached termination, I hope you continue in the maintenance to stay changed. I want to thank you so much for joining me today. I want you to go to recoveryguy.org. I want you to sign up for the newsletter. I want you to check out the blogs, look back at the history of the podcast, register, share, become a part of this movement. Reach out to me. Let me know what I can do to help your recovery journey even be more positive. And as always, my name is Robert, and I am the Recovery Guy.